Hey, when I went to the Broadway production of Kinky Boots a couple of years ago in New York, I was mostly going because Sherry and some friends wanted to see it. I wasn't expecting to like it very much, and I certainly wasn't expecting to use it for a God on Broadway service. But I came out of the theater that night saying, we've got to do this for God on Broadway. As much as any show we've used in our 13 years of doing God on Broadway, this musical preaches the gospel of Jesus Christ. We thought Kinky Boots would be a good musical for us to end with, so we put it on the fourth Sunday of October. We had no idea that it would be the same weekend that Pride was celebrated here in Savannah. And we had no idea it would come after one of the worst weeks in American history for attacking people with different lifestyles and ideologies. And we had no idea that this month was the 20th anniversary of the horrific beating and murder of 21-year-old Matthew Shepard. And we had no idea that this very weekend his ashes would finally be laid to rest. For you see, fearing that his ashes might be vandalized if buried in Wyoming, Matthew's parents took his ashes home with them. And they've been there with them for 20 years. But then a call came from the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., offering to inter his ashes there. Usually, the cathedral is reserved for presidents and for people like Helen Keller. But the invitation came because Matthew's life and death has made a difference in the world and has brought forth great change. The ceremony occurred this Friday, 2 days ago. Matthew's parents celebrate the great progress that has been made with hate crimes and with gay rights after their son's death. But now they're also very concerned because they see that we've taken a great big step back, that much of the progress is trying to be undone. So coming to help educate us and to inspire us are musicals like Kinky Boots. One of my favorite scenes in the musical is when the foreman has it out with Lola and challenges Lola/Simon. They agree to have a wager to see who is the better man. They agree to do one thing that the other asked them to do. The foreman challenges Lola to a boxing match. I know in the movie it's an arm wrestling match. In the musical, it's a boxing match. The foreman has no idea that Lola had been trained as a prize fighter. So as everyone in the factory, all of the foreman's peers are watching, Lola is easily beating up on him. But then as she sees how humiliating it is for him, she allows him to win. But the foreman can tell that Lola let him win, so in private, mind you, he asked her, "Why did you do it?" She said she couldn't be so cruel as to humiliate him in front of his mates. And then she hands the foreman the slip of paper with her request of him, and he opens it, and it says, "Accept people for who they are." One day a man with leprosy came to Jesus and said, "Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean." And Jesus stretched out and touched the man and said, "I do choose. Be made clean." And his leprosy was cleansed. And then Jesus told the man to go show himself to the priest. The reason the man had to go show himself to the priest is because he had to go through a religious ritual of purification in order for him to be part of the community again, in order for him to be with his family and friends again. When you had leprosy, you were not only considered to be physically unclean, you were considered to be spiritually unclean. And so people with leprosy had to live outside of the community, outside of the town. They had to be isolated. They had to keep their distance. But for Jesus, this was unacceptable. And he tells the man, be sure to go see the priest so you can be included again, so that you can be accepted. Now, in making this happen, Jesus touched the man. That was against the law. If you touched someone who was unclean, then you became unclean. So Jesus is willing to break the religious law of that time in order for people who had been outcast to be part of things. Think about that. Jesus is willing to break the religious law of that time in order for people to be included. Those of us who are Methodist may want to ponder about that. Jesus was willing to break the religious law of that time in order for people who have been outcast to be part of things. Of course, he told the man, don't tell anyone I did it. Did you catch that? Did he not want to get in trouble? I don't know, maybe. Maybe he was worried that he would be arrested before he could get his ministry up and running, before he could accomplish all he felt he needed to get accomplished. I don't know. But Jesus was soon doing similar things in public. He healed other people in public who were unclean. He ate with tax collectors and sinners. He hung out with prostitutes. So I'm not sure why he told the man not to tell anyone. Maybe he was worried that the man would get caught up telling people, hanging out with people before he went through the religious steps of purification. Then he'd be in trouble again and be an outcast again. Maybe that was it. So maybe Jesus, it was all about making sure the man would be included and a part of things. I don't know, but it's awful, isn't it, to be excluded. Some of you may have heard the story of Carlton Pearson. When you can, try to see a film about Carlton's life called Come Sunday. I think you can get it on Netflix. Carlton was a huge megastar in the world of televangelists. Oral Roberts had been his mentor, and Oral took young Carlton under his wing and coached him into having one of the largest churches in the United States. 6,000 members every Sunday. Can you imagine? We have over 500 here today. I can't imagine how challenging it would be to handle 6,000 people. That's a lot of toilet tissue you're going through. But one night, Carlton was watching the evening news with one of his children sitting in his lap. And he saw a segment on Rwanda. He saw pictures of starving mothers in Africa doing all they could do to carry their starving children. He had been taught, he preached that people like this who didn't know Jesus the way he knew Jesus were going to hell. And he thought to himself, oh my goodness, they are in hell. It can't get any worse for these people. This is hell for them. And then he wondered, how would a compassionate, loving God send these poor, struggling people to hell? And then he deduced that God wouldn't. That a loving and caring God wouldn't. That hell for them was what they were experiencing now. Hell is the cruelty that we have on earth. And Carlton decided to bring this message to his congregation. Guess what happened? Oral and other leaders in that denomination not only said Carlton was wrong, but that he had gone crazy. And he ended up losing his church. He ended up losing his career. He ended up losing his home. He ended up losing his friends or people he thought were his friends. Carlton said he went from hero to zero. It's tough when you are the one who is excluded or rejected. When he could not get any lower, Carlton received a phone call, an invitation to be a guest speaker at a small church in San Francisco, at a place full of outcasts, a lesbian pastor, a church of gays, AIDS patients, and abused women. Carlton said they had experienced what I was experiencing. They were pros at it. Gays are pros at being rejected. Now remember, these were the people who for many years Carlton had called an abomination and condemned to hell. But now Carlton shared his story with this small congregation of outcasts and shared that he was hurting because he had lost everything. And after he finished speaking, the minister invited him to sit down and to take off his shoes. The minister got a bowl of water, knelt down, and started washing Carlton's feet. He said, everyone there was singing and weeping and washing my feet. Everybody there, he said, became an angel. Everyone there was Jesus. It was so powerful, he said. These people have been so hurt and so broken and so rejected and so bruised. They just healed me. They literally healed me. And now Carlton is back preaching again. Preaching the gospel of love, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, preaching the gospel of Kinky Boots. During the very last song in the musical Kinky Boots, Lola says this to the audience: "We've all heard of the 12-step program, have we not? Well, what you can do in 12, I want you to know we can do in 6. By the way, when AA first began, it started with 6 steps. Did you know that? And then it grew to being 12 steps, but started with 6. So Lola says, what you can do in 12, we can do in 6, and it goes like this. 1, pursue the truth. 2, learn something new. 3, accept yourself, and you'll accept others too. 4, let love shine. 5, let pride be your guide. 6, change the world, and you change your mind. One more time. 1, pursue the truth. 2, learn something new. Accept yourself, and you'll accept others too. 4, let love shine. 5, let pride be your guide, not as in your ego, but in not being ashamed of yourself. Be proud of the way God created you and the way God uses you. And 6, change the world, and you change your mind. As much as Lola helped Charlie, helped save the shoe company, helped people keep their jobs by designing the special boots for drag queens, Charlie is still somewhat uncomfortable and embarrassed about having a drag queen as a close friend. And so when he discovers that Lola has planned for her drag queen angels to be the runway models for the new boots at the fashion show in Milan, instead of actually using real runway models, Charlie goes berserk and he lashes out at Lola and humiliates her in front of all of the factory workers. And Lola, of course, storms out. Later, as he heads to the airport for Milan, Charlie calls Lola and leaves a heartfelt message of apology on her voicemail. But too little, too late, it seems. Charlie arrives in Milan, and with no runway models to wear the new boots, Charlie has to wear them and model them himself. But as he walks down the runway, he looks awkward and uncomfortable. It's embarrassing. And just as the fashion show and the new boots appear to be doomed, Lola and her angels show up wearing the boots. They become the runway models and are a huge hit, and the Kinky Boots a great success. And the best part is that the factory no longer is called Price and Son, but is now called Price and Simon. One of my favorite Anne Lamott stories is the one about a man named Ken, a member of the church she attends. Ken was dying with AIDS, his partner having already died of AIDS. And in her book, Traveling Mercies, Anne Lamott writes this: "There's a woman in our choir named Renola, who is large and beautiful and jovial and black and as devout as can be, who has been a little standoffish towards Ken. She was raised in the South by Baptists who taught her that his way of life, that he was an abomination. It is hard for her to break through this. I think she and a few other women at church are, on the most visceral level, a little afraid of catching the disease. But Kenny has come to church almost every week for the last year and has won almost everyone over. He finally missed a couple of Sundays when he got too weak, and then a month ago he was back weighing almost no pounds. His face even more lopsided, as if he'd had a stroke. Still, during the prayers of the people, he talked joyously of his life and his decline, of grace and redemption, of how safe and happy he feels these days. So on this particular Sunday, for the first hymn, the so-called morning hymn, we sang Jacob's Ladder, which goes, every round goes higher, higher, while ironically Kenny couldn't even stand up. But he sang away sitting down with the hymnal in his lap. And then when it came time for the second hymn, the fellowship hymn, we were to sing His Eye is on the Sparrow. The pianist was playing and the whole congregation had risen. Only Kenny remained seated, holding the hymnal in his lap. And we began to sing, Why Should I Feel Discouraged? Why Do the Shadows Fall? And Renola watched Kenny rather skeptically for a moment. And then her face began to melt and contort like his. She left the choir and went to his side and bent down to lift him up. She lifted up this white rag doll, this scarecrow. She held him next to her, draped over and against her like a child while they sang together. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he cares for me. The two of them sang together, cried together, were children of God together. Anne Lamott says that she doesn't know if this episode constitutes a full-fledged, no kidding miracle or not. But she writes that it's close enough for her. The miracle of Kenny and Renola. The miracle of Charlie and Lola. What kind of miracles? What kind of miracles are you helping to create? You will if you pursue the truth, learn something new, accept yourself, let love shine, let pride be your guide, change the world, and you change your mind. Amen and amen.